I thought we were building this together, my brother and me, partners in every sense of the word. But then came the gut punch. He'd launched the company without me and told the investors I had backed out. I stared at the glowing message on my phone from William, one of our top investors. Excited for the launch today. Rob said you decided to step back, but I still wanted to congratulate you. Step back. The words felt like ice water down my spine. I hadn't stepped back. I was supposed to be in that room, pitching, launching, celebrating. I scrambled for my laptop, fingers trembling as I opened our site, and there it was, live. The company I had poured years into, the brand I had crafted with care, the pitch deck I had revised over countless late nights while Rob talked numbers with the money people. Everything was there, except for me, not a trace of my name. My chest tightened. I grabbed my keys and bolted. Rob's office wasn't far. I'd walked that path 100 times. Our office, as I had always called it. We'd worked out of that space for months, side by side, prepping for this moment. I pushed through the front doors, brushing past the receptionist's startled hello. I didn't slow down until I hit the conference room, and there he was, Rob, standing tall in front of a room full of investors, grinning, laughing, acting like he'd built it all alone, like I'd never been part of any of it. He saw me instantly. His smile twitched, just for a heartbeat, before he smoothed it back into place. "Ah," he said, arms wide like nothing was wrong. "There she is, my sister." Every head turned toward me. I barely noticed the nods. My pulse roared in my ears. My eyes locked on Rob, my brother. The one person I thought would never do this to me. I stepped forward, my voice low and razor sharp. "What the hell is this?" Rob had the nerve to laugh, brushing it off with a wave. "Nat, let's talk outside." "No." My voice sliced through the room like a blade. "We're talking now, in front of everyone." A few investors exchanged wary glances. Good, let them watch. Let them hear the truth. William, the one who'd unknowingly pulled the curtain back, cleared his throat. "Is there a problem?" I turned to him without hesitation. "Yeah, William, there is." I shot Rob a searing glare. I didn't step back from this company. That was a lie. A ripple of murmurs moved through the room like static. I took another step forward, fists tight at my sides. I built this. I created the concept. I landed half of these investor meetings. And now Rob's standing here, pretending he did it all himself. Rob's smile faded into something colder. "Nat, let's not make a scene." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You stole my business and you're worried about a scene?" The air in the room grew heavy. William leaned back slowly, eyes flicking between us. "Rob, what's she talking about?" When I saw it, the flicker of panic in Rob's eyes, the tightening of his jaw, the twitch in his fingers. But then, like always, he shifted, slipped into his polished mask. He faced the room with a breezy grin. "Listen, it's just a miscommunication. My sister and I," he gave me a calculated glance, "had some creative differences. She decided this wasn't the right fit." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. He lied so easily, twisted things just enough to sound plausible. I turned to the room, voice ringing out. "That's not true. I never backed out. I was supposed to be in those meetings. I was supposed to be here, today." William's brow furrowed. "Rob, she's saying she was still involved." Rob let out a theatrical sigh, all faux exhaustion. "This is exactly why we couldn't move forward together. Natalie's passionate, but she's emotional. Like that was a flaw. Like that excused everything." "I had to make some tough business decisions," he said. My blood surged with rage. "You mean you had to cut me out so you could take all the credit?" He lifted his hands in mock surrender. "I made the best decision for the company. You weren't ready for this, Nat." That was it, the final crack. I drew in a slow breath, let it settle, then looked around the room. "William," I said, my voice steady and sharp, "you remember how hard I worked on this, right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, you set up our first meetings." I turned to another investor. "And didn't I personally write the proposal you signed off on?" Another nod, a slower one this time. And then I saw it, that flicker of recognition. The truth beginning to shine through Rob's polished illusion. But I wasn't done. I turned back to him, my voice dropping into ice. You stole from me, my ideas, my business, my future. I stepped forward, locking eyes with him. And if you think I'm just going to walk away quietly? I paused, let the weight of my words hang heavy in the air. Then you never knew me at all. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. For the first time, Rob had nothing to say. No clever spin. No smirking deflection. Because now, the room was watching. And I was done being invisible. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were always there, little clues I brushed aside, because I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe this time was different. That for once, we were equals. That this wasn't just another game where Rob took what he wanted. Assuming it was his by default, leaving me to gather the wreckage. Maybe that was my mistake. Believing we were playing the same game. I'd been trying to build something real. He'd just been waiting for the perfect moment to take it. And I could still hear his voice, echoing from the start. That first spark of the idea, when I brought it to him. Are you sure about this? He'd said, leaning back with that lazy, smug grin. Turns out I was sure. He just wasn't ready for me. That tone, smug, condescending, like he was indulging a child. Do you really think you can handle running a whole company? I'd forced a smile, swallowing the sting behind his words. Yes, Rob, I've been working on this for years. I'd tried to keep it hopeful, tried to believe we could be a team. You're great at pitching, I'm stronger with operations. We balance each other out. He'd made a show of thinking it over, but deep down, I knew. Even then, I knew. He never planned to be my partner. He was just waiting to see if it was worth taking. I was the one who laid the groundwork, the one who drafted the business plan, saved every spare dollar, read every legal guide, wrote every early draft of our partnership agreements. I had done the quiet, unglamorous work, the kind no one sees but everything depends on. Rob? Rob could talk. He could charm a room, spin a vision, light a fire in people without lifting a finger to build the foundation beneath it. And that was why I thought we'd be a good team. I knew my weaknesses. I wasn't great with crowds. I didn't thrive under pressure in pitch meetings. But I knew this business inside and out. I had built it, brick by brick, and I was willing to share it with him. I just didn't see what he saw. To Rob, I wasn't a partner. I was a stepping stone. The first red flag had barely registered. One late night, I was fine-tuning our pitch deck when Rob strolled in, glanced at the screen, and said, "You should let me present this." I frowned, but nodded. "That's fine. You're better at speaking anyway." He clapped me on the shoulder, grinning. "Exactly. You do the numbers, I'll do the talking. That's how we work best, right?" At the time, it felt harmless, logical even. I was better at the numbers, and Rob, he thrived in front of a crowd. But I should have looked closer. Because after that, every meeting, every pitch, every investor dinner, Rob was the voice, Rob was the face. And me? I wasn't just in the background. I was barely there at all. Still, I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was overthinking. He always introduced me, always called me his brilliant sister who handled the behind-the-scenes magic. But that's just it. Behind the scenes is easy to forget. And that's exactly what he was counting on. The introductions got shorter, the explanations vaguer. And then, almost without me noticing, I was no longer invited to the meetings that mattered. I pushed back once, just weeks before the launch. "Rob, I need to be in those investor meetings," I said, arms crossed, watching him type away like I wasn't even there. "I've put in just as much work as you." He didn't even glance up. "I know, but investors don't want both of us. They like things clean, simple. One face for the company, you know?" I clenched my jaw. I don't want to be cleaned out of my own company. That got his attention, barely. He looked up, face unreadable. "Nat, come on. Don't make this about ego. You're good at what you do, but I'm the one who can sell it. That's just how business works." A sick twist coiled in my gut. But he said it so smoothly, so confidently, that I swallowed the feeling. Told myself I was overreacting. Because why would Rob betray me? I ignored the other warning signs too, the contracts that were never finalized. The paperwork he kept pushing off with a breezy, "It's not urgent." The way he insisted, always, that investor calls were better handled solo. I didn't see it until it was too late. Not until I stood in that conference room, staring at a business I had built, only to find my name scrubbed from it entirely. That's when the truth landed like a blow to the chest. He had been planning this, not for days or weeks, for months. He had been waiting for the perfect moment to cut me out. And now he had. He'd stolen the company, my work, my vision. And the worst part? No one looked surprised. William and the others shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, but not shocked. Why would they be? Rob had gotten to them first, fed them his version, piece by piece. That I was unsure, that I lacked confidence, that I had quietly stepped aside. But none of that was true. I hadn't backed out. I hadn't faltered. What I had done was trust him. And now, standing there, I saw it clearly. Rob hadn't just erased me on launch day. He'd been erasing me all along. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands. He thought I'd walk away, thought I'd stay quiet, let him take everything I'd built. But Rob had no idea who he was dealing with. I had given years to this, and I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to let him steal it without a fight. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, spine straight, refusing to let them see me crack. But the second I stepped outside, the weight of it all crashed down on me. I had just called out my own brother, in front of his investors no less. I'd laid everything bare, but had it even mattered? I took a shaky breath, trying to hold myself together, but my thoughts were spiraling. Rob had been playing the long game, quietly rewriting the story piece by piece, so that when this moment came, he could shrug me off as emotional, difficult, unstable. And the worst part? Some of them bought it. I saw it in their eyes, the flicker of hesitation, the doubt. Was I telling the truth? Or was I just a bitter sister who couldn't handle being left behind? The thought made my stomach churn. I had been the one to build this business. I had done the research. I had mapped out the strategy. I had put in the work. Every late night, every number, every plan. But because Rob got to them first, I was the one fighting just to prove I belonged. That wasn't going to happen. Not without a fight. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First on the list, William. He was the only one who'd shown a crack of doubt, even if he hadn't meant to. He answered on the second ring. "Natalie," he said, his voice cautious. "I need to meet," I said, cutting straight to it. "Alone." A pause. "I don't know if that's a good idea. This is already messy." I clenched my jaw. "Then you need to hear the truth. The real truth. Because if you back Rob, you're backing a fraud." Another pause, then a sigh. "All right, 10 minutes. That's all I needed." We met at a small coffee shop an hour later. William looked as uncomfortable as I felt. But I wasn't there to plead. I was there to prove. I opened my laptop and laid everything out. Notes, meeting logs, every version of the pitch deck, with my edits, my fingerprints on every slide. Emails I had sent, investor threads I had initiated. A paper trail, unshakable, undeniable. And I watched as piece by piece, his expression began to change. I didn't just tell William my side. I showed him, slide by slide, email by email. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw it. Real doubt flickering across his face. Not doubt in me, doubt in Rob. "This doesn't look like someone who stepped back," he murmured, eyes scanning the relentless stream of my work. "That's because I didn't," I said, voice steady. "Rob took everything and acted like I never existed." William leaned back, rubbing his chin, the weight of it all sinking in. "I won't lie to you, Natalie. This is a mess." "I know. And Rob is very persuasive." "I know that too." He paused, studying me like he was finally seeing me for the first time. "What do you want?" I took a deep, grounding breath. "I want my name back. I want my company back." He watched me for a long beat, then gave a single slow nod. "I'll see what I can do." Not a promise, but a door. And in that moment, I knew Rob wasn't walking away with this. Not this time. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I reached out to everyone, investors, partners, early supporters. I didn't throw dirt. I didn't drag Rob's name through the mud. I just gave them the truth. Piece by piece, his story started to fracture, cracks forming where he'd once had full control. And then, something I hadn't expected. A journalist contacted me, Someone had tipped them off, probably an investor trying to protect their own name before the fallout hit. They wanted my side of the story. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want a public war. But then I pictured Rob, standing in that conference room, grinning like he had already won. And I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been erased. Everyone who had been pushed aside after building something worth fighting for. So I said yes. The article dropped 2 days later. Siblings turned business partners, or business rivals. The story behind a startup feud. That was the headline. And the article didn't take sides. It didn't have to. It just laid the facts bare. It told the story of how we'd built the company together, how I had been there from day one, designing, planning, pushing it forward, how slowly and deliberately Rob edged me out, how he launched the company under his name alone. But the part that really stung, the part that rattled him, was about the paperwork, how the legal structure of the company wasn't nearly as locked down as Rob had led people to believe. That single detail sent a ripple through everything. Because if there's one thing investors fear more than bad press, it's uncertainty. And suddenly, Rob's shining, confident facade didn't look so solid. His company didn't look so clean. What came next, I didn't expect. Rob called me. For the first time since that day in the conference room, his name lit up my phone. I just stared at the screen, then picked up. "Nat," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." I said nothing, let the silence stretch long enough for him to feel it. "This is getting out of control," he rushed on. "The investors are panicking. We need to come to an agreement." I leaned back in my chair, calm and steady. "An agreement? You can still be part of this," he said quickly, like a salesman trying to close a deal. "We can fix it. You just need to stop." I laughed, a short, incredulous laugh. "Stop," I repeated. "Stop what, Rob? Telling the truth?" He let out a sharp breath. "You know this isn't just about truth. It's about perception. You're making this worse for both of us." I shook my head slowly. "No, Rob. You made this worse when you stole my company." Silence. Then, low and reluctant, he muttered, "I should have handled things differently." Not an apology, not really. But it was the closest he would ever come. And it didn't change a thing. Because I wasn't going to let this go. Rob had made one fatal mistake. He assumed I'd stay quiet, that I'd fade into the background like before, that I'd let him win. But he was wrong, so wrong. I wasn't done, not even close. Now I had the truth on my side, and I was going to make damn sure everyone saw it. Rob had underestimated me, thought he could charm his way back into control, thought he could talk me down, convince me that fighting him would only drag us both down. But he was too late for that. He had already taken everything. What did I have left to lose? The thing was, I had built this business to last, brick by brick, a slow, deliberate foundation. Rob had rushed the launch, desperate for attention, eager to prove something before he was even ready. Now that the truth was out, the cracks in his empire were showing, and fast, and I wasn't about to go down with him. The next morning, I got an email from one of the major investors. Short, professional, director. William had been doing work behind the scenes, and now the tide was starting to turn. "We need to talk." I didn't hesitate. An hour later, I walked into the investor's office, heart pounding. I didn't know what they wanted. Maybe they were trying to patch things up. Maybe they were hoping I'd quietly back off. But then I saw Rob, already seated, arms crossed, looking worn down and cornered. And that gave me hope. The lead investor, Daniel, didn't waste time. "Natalie," he said, tapping his fingers on the desk. "We've reviewed the documentation you provided. It's clear you had a significant role in this company's creation." I didn't let myself breathe. Not yet. "Rob tells us it was a miscommunication," Daniel continued, glancing at him. "That the two of you had differences about the company's direction, that he moved forward when you chose to step back." Rob jumped in, nodding eagerly. "Exactly. I should have handled it better. I should have communicated more, but I wasn't trying to cut Natalie out." I nearly laughed, but held it in. He was still trying to spin it, still pretending this was just a misunderstanding, not what it really was. Theft. I met Daniel's gaze, steady and cold. "That's a lie." Rob stiffened beside me. "Come on, Nat." I turned to the investors, my voice calm but sharp. Let's be clear. Rob didn't just move forward without me. He altered contracts, erased my name from documents, locked me out of key decisions, deliberately. I reached into my bag and pulled out the proof, emails, messages, time-stamped records of every calculated move he'd made to push me aside. I spread them across the table like a quiet storm. For the first time since this began, Rob looked genuinely nervous. Daniel flipped through the papers, eyes narrowing as he read. The room fell silent except for the soft rustle of shifting pages. When he looked back up, his expression was unreadable. "This is a serious issue," he said at last. "The last thing we want is a legal battle that blows up the company before it even gets off the ground." Rob leaned in quickly. "Exactly, which is why—" Daniel held up a hand, silencing him. "Which is why we need to fix this, immediately." Rob looked momentarily relieved, like he thought he was about to get rescued. Then Daniel turned to me. "Natalie, what do you want?" I felt it, the shift, the power tilting. Rob's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. His jaw clenched. His confidence wavered. I let the silence sit a second longer, watching him squirm. And then I spoke. "I want my share of the company back. Full rights, full recognition. And I want Rob to issue a public statement, acknowledging that I am a co-founder, not an assistant, not someone who stepped back. The truth." Rob went pale. "Nat, you can't be serious." I turned to him, eyes cold. "You didn't think I was serious when you stole my business either, did you?" Daniel leaned back, nodding slightly. "That's fair." Rob let out a frustrated breath. "You're going to ruin this company over a technicality." I clenched my fist. "You already did." The room froze. Daniel exchanged a glance with the other investors, then gave a single nod. "We can work with that." He turned to Rob. "But this can't happen again. We invest in people we trust. And right now, your credibility is on thin ice." That landed hard. Rob flinched. Because for him, this wasn't just about money. It wasn't even about the company anymore. It was about his image, his reputation, cracking like glass under pressure. The meeting ended soon after, and as I stepped into the hallway, Rob followed, his face tight with barely contained fury. "You couldn't just let this go, could you?" he hissed. I turned to face him slowly, head tilted. "Would you have let it go if I'd done this to you?" He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I stared at him for a long, quiet moment. This was the brother I had defended for years, the one I'd trusted, even when I shouldn't have, but not this time. This time, I wasn't letting him rewrite the ending. "You should be grateful," I said, voice low. "If I'd really wanted to ruin you, I would have." Rob swallowed hard. For the first time, he had no comeback. And I walked away, lighter than I'd felt in months. Because I hadn't just reclaimed my company, I had reclaimed myself.